Hey guys, welcome back. Jessie here. So today we are going to be talking about boundaries. So what I'm finding is a lot of people do not have healthy, strong boundaries in place, and it leads to issues down the road. So today we're going to be talking about boundaries, like what is a boundary, how to know where your boundaries have been crossed, and how to develop strong, healthy boundaries so your relationships will be healthy and they can flourish. So first things first is we are going to define what a boundary is. So a boundary is put into place. It's almost like a guideline. Think of it as a guideline that you set for yourself to show people how you want to be treated. You set a standard, right? It's put in place to help you and protect you from being violated, used, manipulated, and mistreated. And it protects you and puts you in a comfort zone. Okay, so that is what a boundary is. And a lot of people have a hard time identifying when the boundaries are crossed, or they have a hard time speaking up about when that boundary has been crossed. So we're going to be speaking about that, right? So one way to really identify when your boundary has been crossed with you, a boundary that you have set for yourself has been crossed with you, is you feel uncomfortable. So that's number one. You gotta pay attention to where your body is telling you and how you feel. So if somebody does something to you that makes you feel uncomfortable, or you feel uncomfortable about speaking about something, they have crossed a boundary with you. Right? So one way to identify when a boundary has been crossed with you is when someone impedes on your space, on your privacy, or they offend you or make you feel uncomfortable in a certain way. That is the number one way to identify when a boundary has been crossed with you. And you will actually feel that. You'll feel it in your gut, you'll feel it in your intuition. It will just be something that you're like, wait, what did that person say? Or wait, what did that person just do? Or, you'll just feel like taken back by them. You'll feel uncomfortable. And that is the number one way to know that a boundary has been crossed. In psychoanalysis and psychology, we have a term called boundary violation, and that's basically when a boundary has been crossed and impedes on a client's safety, right? So if you take that term and you think about it in everyday life, it's the same. You can apply it in the same way, right? So anybody who makes you feel unsafe or uncomfortable has violated a boundary, and that is considered a boundary violation. When someone impedes on your personal space or your personal life, your privacy, right? Or they're doing something that makes you feel uncomfortable, they have crossed the line with you. They have crossed a boundary with you. A lot of people like to test the waters, right? They'll like to see how far they can get with you before you actually speak up and say, hey, like, that's not cool. So just understand that as well. You're gonna have that in life, so you're gonna have to learn how to identify it and learn how to speak up for yourself. So what to do when a boundary has been crossed. So I'm gonna give you little examples of little ways that boundaries are crossed with different people, and how to handle them, right? So recently I was speaking to a friend, and she just recently got engaged and had a housewarming party. And so her fiance's, friends were there, and so were her friends, and everybody was out and having a good time. And in the mix of the get together, in the mix of the party, her fiance's friends, I guess they got a little too comfortable, and they got up and started changing the music and messing around with, the music selection. And so my friend, she felt uncomfortable. She felt as if, that is her space, her party, and, she wants to be able to express herself through her musical taste. And it was a violation to her to have these other individuals come into her space and start, they got a little too comfortable and start messing with her music. She felt like, who does that, So the way she handled it is she went to speak to her fiance, and, he addressed it. But what happens if that was you and there was no other person to go to? How would you handle that? Would you be comfortable going up to the person and saying, hey, I was really listening to that. I'll prefer if you just, leave the music alone. I have a playlist going on, and, if you want to hear something, you can wait until my music's finished, and then we could talk about, what you want to listen to and playing your selections. So that's a great way to handle it, right? But you still got to be able to have that strong foundation to go up to the person and address it. So she knew that a boundary was crossed, but she felt very uncomfortable in addressing it. And we actually spoke about it, like how to handle it. She asked me my advice, like, how would you have handled that? And, I told her I would just, go up to the person and speak to them directly and say, hey, I was, really listening to that. If there's something that you would like to listen to, please next time come up to me and let me know. And then we could kind of see if we could fit it in with the playlist that I have going on, right? So, when you have that situation, when you're having get-togethers and people are coming into your space and violating your space, it is up to you to speak up, and if you don't speak up, how is this person going to know that they crossed the boundary with you? Yes, we all believe like certain people should know certain things. They should be aware, like this is not what you do when you go to other people's homes, but some people they're raised differently, so we also have to remember that people are raised differently. And in that scenario, it could be that this friend, he's used to his buddy being single. Maybe he had a space that, they would come over and everybody would just kind of do whatever they want, and it was never a big deal. But now they have to consider that, he is an engaged man. He is having a shared space with his fiance, and it's not only about his space. Now he's sharing that with another person, so the rules and the standards are going to be different. But sometimes people don't think like that. So it's up to you to make them aware, right? So another example of something of the sort is, I had a friend that their husband's, nephew will come over. They had white furniture, and this person, came to visit, popped their feet on the furniture, and, she felt some type of way about it. And she didn't know how to handle that as well. And so what do? Well, it is your space. You are spending time and money to make it comfortable and make it your own. And, people work hard for their things, so you don't want people coming into your space and violating it. I'm sure the other person, it wasn't their intention. But like I said, you have to make people mindful of what they are doing. And if it's making you feel uncomfortable, it violates your personal boundaries in a way, you have to be able to speak up. So what do you do in a scenario like that? Well, you go up to them and say, hey, listen, I know you want to be comfortable, and if you're okay with them taking their feet, their shoes off, let them know, I have no problem with your feet being on the couch, but can you please take off your shoes? My furniture is white, and I want to maintain the color of my furniture, and it's an investment, and I want to protect it. If you're uncomfortable with them coming into your space and putting their feet up on your couch, then let them know. I'll just prefer, I invested in this furniture and it cost me a lot of money. It's not really meant for like sleeping. So if you wouldn't mind, can you just sit up on the furniture, So, you don't have to come at a person super aggressive. You just have to be honest. Okay. And, if you're not honest, like I said, people are not going to know when they have crossed that boundary with you, and they are going to continue to do the behavior. And, it's not a good scenario for anyone, because you're upset about something they did. They have no idea what they did to cross that boundary with you, and they're kind of like left like, what's going on? And you're like, I don't ever want this person back in my house ever again, because they're rude and disrespectful, or whatever you might think about that person in that scenario. And it could just be that it's a misunderstanding. And then there are others who know exactly when they're crossing a boundary with you. And like I said, they'll do it to see how far they can get with you. And these people you would know. So if someone is doing something to you, but it's done in a very sneaky, underhanded way, that person knows to some degree that they are doing something that they should not be doing. Because obviously, if it was something that was on the up and up, they wouldn't care about saying or doing something in front of a group of people. So if they're doing it in a cunning way, like making sure people are not around when they say certain things, or making sure people are not aware of what they're doing, yeah, they are super aware that they're crossing a boundary with you, and they are testing you. So it's up to you to stand in your conviction, stand in your truth, and say, hey, listen, that's not cool. And, this kind of ends now, and speak up for yourself. Okay? So one thing with boundaries is, if you do not have a strong foundation of who you are and what you will and won't tolerate, then your boundaries are going to be kind of, weak. They're going to be in that middle ground, and you're not going to know when someone crosses that boundary with you. So that's what we're going to talk about next. How to get to the point that you are able to develop strong boundaries. So that's point number one. You have to know yourself. You have to have and practice self-awareness. So if you're not aware, what bugs you, and like little things that make you feel uncomfortable, it's going to be hard to verbalize that to someone else, right? So that's one point. The second point is being able to verbalize that, right? So a lot of times people know when a boundary is being crossed with them, they know how they feel, but they still don't speak up. So they're afraid to offend others, they're afraid to come off rude, or they're just, people pleasers. And you got to understand that when someone violates a boundary with you have to have enough self-love for yourself to be able to say, yeah, I respect our relationship, but at the same time, I also need that respect for myself. So if a person is not giving you that respect or showing you that respect in a certain, instance, then you have to be the one to have enough respect for yourself to speak up. So go by that, have that love for yourself. Sometimes people, like I said, they'll try to take advantage, and it's up to you to kind of put that person in their spot and let them know. When you set a certain boundary, you're showing people how to treat you. You're telling them this is the standard, this is what I'm going to accept, and this is what I am not going to accept. They can either take it or leave it. Don't be afraid of jeopardizing a relationship, whatever the relationship is, if a person is crossing your boundaries. That is the quickest way to remove toxic people from your life, or people who are not willing to have a healthy balance with you. If you set a boundary or correct someone about their behavior or something they did or something that they said that made you feel uncomfortable, and they feel like the hell with that person, they said this, but I'm not really gonna take them serious, or I'm just gonna ignore what they said, or I'm just gonna keep on disrespecting them in some way, that is your number one red flag that this person is not going to respect you. They do not want to hear, or they're not interested in what you're saying. And, their agenda is not to have a healthy balance with you. And you have to make a decision, that this person is not going to be, worthy of your investment, right? Because any relationship that's worthy on having is going to give you, reciprocity. If they know that you're uncomfortable with something they are doing, they are going to apologize in an authentic, true way and correct their behavior. That's just how healthy relationships work. If they don't, then this person is not a keeper. Start distancing yourself or just completely cut them off. To set those healthy boundaries, you also need to tune into your feelings, right? So when somebody does something to you, they violate your boundaries, you feel some type of way, a good way, if you are not addressing it at that moment, is to feel your feelings, right? Because if you are super upset, if they did something that's a big, huge violation to you, you're going to be angry about it. So you want to make sure that you're feeling your feelings, you're taking time to process through them, and taking time to heal whatever they did. And then when you're ready, have a conversation with them about how they crossed your boundaries or how they did something to make you feel uncomfortable, right? So once again, you need to be able to verbalize that. But in order for you to verbalize that, you need to know what you're feeling. So you have to be able to process your feelings and feel your feelings, okay? So understand that you are valuable and you are an asset to them as you feel they are to you. And if, like I said, it is a healthy, reciprocal relationship, and they did something without really realizing, maybe it really wasn't their intention, they'll be open to hearing you out, and they'll also be open to validating your feelings. They'll say, wow, I didn't know you felt like that. Maybe they'll explain themselves, I did this because that, and if that makes sense to you, and you're like, okay, I can see your point, and then you're able to work it out, and they should follow it up with, an apology, a sincere apology, and saying, I would never do that again. I didn't realize how that was affecting you. I didn't realize how that made you feel. I didn't realize that I crossed the boundary with you, and so on and so forth, right? That should be how a healthy, relationship and dynamic goes. A person should appreciate you and not want to violate those boundaries with you. So guys, always remember, when you don't have strong, healthy boundaries in place, you are leaving yourself open for violation. You're leaving yourself open for disappointment. heartbreak, unfair treatment, imbalances in relationship. You're gonna open yourself up to resentment, because after someone does something to you and they're not correcting their behavior, or they're not knowing that they violated a boundary with you, that might be something that's starting to boil up inside of you. So always express yourself. Never be afraid to tell someone where they stand with you and what they have done to make you feel uncomfortable. It is your right. It is your right to protect yourself emotionally, mentally, and physically. A lot of the times we are not taught about boundaries, how to approach them, how to speak about them, and how to set them, right? It's not something we speak about. Society doesn't speak about it. It's not something we learn about in school. So it's up to you to have that self-awareness and educate yourself on these types of topics, right? We're gonna always have someone that's going to violate our boundaries, but it's up to you to protect yourself. That is your given right to make sure you emotionally, mentally, and physically are okay. A lot of the times, the only boundary we ever have been taught from childhood is a sexual boundary, right? When someone, you tell your child, or you have been taught as a child, if someone touches you in a certain place, that is unacceptable, and you tell mommy and daddy, and that if that makes you feel uncomfortable, then you speak up, right? So that boundary we speak a lot about, but we don't speak about how to protect yourself emotionally and physically, right? So a lot of another boundary that people usually cross with you is getting into your personal life, right? So people ask you a lot of these personal questions about, your intimate affairs, or, your marriage or your relationships. And it might be someone that you're not even close to, and you don't feel comfortable having those conversations with them. Well, you know what? Let them know. My personal life is my personal life, and I really don't want to discuss it, So that's also a boundary, one of those boundaries that a lot of people like to cross. And like I said, sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's not. So you just have to be very discerning when you're dealing with people. Obviously, if this is a person who crosses your boundary all the time, and they're not making any changes, even after you speak up, they are lacking respect for you. So it's up to you to stand in your power, stand in your conviction, and do not back down. So if a person starts mistreating you, or keeping their distance because they didn't like that you set a boundary, well, you know what? That means that was an imbalanced relationship. That means that person is upset because you set a threshold, you set a standard, you put a stop to the mistreatment. And if they don't like that, it's because their mistreatment is there because it's only fueling them. It's an agenda they have that's giving them something and not giving back to you. And a lot of people, especially manipulators, don't like it when you put your foot down, because now that means they can't get whatever they were getting from you, whether it's your energy, whether it's your time, whatever it may be. They don't like that you finally say, hey, what's this is not cool, I don't like this, and we're not going to continue down this avenue. So be mindful of how people react to once you set a boundary. That shows the line of where their respect lies for you. So remember that, guys. So guys, that's all I have for you today. I hope that if your boundaries are not set, you start practicing some self-love, get enough confidence within you, and understand that you are worth setting boundaries in place and not letting people take advantage of you in any form or fashion. If somebody does something to make you feel uncomfortable, it is your given right to put an end to it. You don't have to be rude, you don't have to be confrontational, you just have to let the person know and be honest that you do not like the behavior, the treatment, whatever it is that they're bringing towards for you, and you are not going to tolerate it. If you haven't subscribed, I hope you do so and become part of my tribe, and I'll see you on my next one. Bye.